Let's rescue some cake fails, starting with the blank space cake. If we take a look at the video, Taylor stabs the heart cake and it splatters red sauce everywhere. Now if I slow that right down for you, see if you can tell how they did it in the original clip. It's CGI. The red has been digitally added later, and we can tell that because of all the inconsistencies in the splatter pattern, and it just doesn't look right. Play it fast though and you don't even notice. And we also know they used CGI in other parts of the clip because if you watch the behind the scenes you can see they didn't actually damage the expensive car.
We'll add the rest in CG, you know? Bam! Bam! Keep going.
Many years ago, closer to when this song was actually released, I made a very simple blank space cake with a layer of strawberry sauce encased in chocolate so that when you cut it, it flowed out. And I said at the time, it's not going to spurt up because we're not using special effects. But fast forward many years and some clever cake decorators have made cakes where the sauce does impressively spurt out the top when you stab the knife in. And while that looks great on their videos, it seems to be causing people problems in real life. So let's run some tests to find out why this is failing so often. Most of the instructional videos use a balloon filled with liquid. Now, even if you pour more liquid into the funnel, this is not going to fill up any more than that because there's just not enough pressure to stretch the balloon. So let me tie that off as tightly as I can and put it into a glass so that we can film what happens. Wow! It's surprisingly resilient to popping. It's not until I push it right into the bottom of the glass that it finally cuts through the balloon. Now, if I repeat that but with soft cake below the balloon and a metal lid because I'm scared of breaking the glass, now that it has a cushion of cake, it's even harder to pop. I have to pin the rubber to the base to get it to break. And most cakes have more height to them than this one little layer. And once I do get it to break, there's not much spurting out. But if I poke it again now that there's a hole in it, up it goes. So what if we use pressure to force more liquid into the balloon so that the rubber is stretched tighter? Will it break more easily now that the whole thing is bigger? Let's see. Nope, it's even harder to pop. The knife is just being pushed off. It's like it bounces it off to the sides. This is a pointy knife, I assure you, but it just keeps getting flicked off to the side, even if I push down right in the center as far as I can, it still flicks out to the side. Now, I've got a little bit of rubber there, so if I keep pushing that bit of the balloon down to the base, it finally breaks when we hit the bottom, but there's very little spurting up. Next, let's try a water balloon. If you just use a funnel for this one, it will be tiny. We can't get anything into it, so we need the pressure from using a bottle. So we've got the closed system so we can squeeze it and fill up the balloon. That broke on the second stab, so it was easier to break, but again, it didn't spurt up. It's just like the balloon unwraps around the water and then the water goes down. Some other videos suggested using plastic food wrap and twisting it tightly and tying it in a knot. This at least is food safe, so it would be preferable. It is easier to break, and on second stab you do get a little bit going up, but not much. The other method, of course, would be to have a syringe with a tube coming up from under the cake, and then someone would need to squeeze the syringe as the person cuts the cake, which works, but it's not as cool. And it's definitely how this cake was done. I think I prefer the look of the normal balloon that was funnel filled and tied tightly. So let's try that with some raspberry juice. I've just defrosted a bag of frozen raspberries to get this juice. Now I'm going to put water into the balloon first to wash it. I'm not sure if you can see that on camera, but the water now has this powdery stuff on top, and balloons often have talc in them to stop them sticking together. These are not food grade, so I'm not loving the idea of the sauce sitting in them for any length of time. I'm going to put it in at the last minute. To make a heart-shaped cake, you don't need to buy a heart baking tin. Just take a round cake and cut it like this and rearrange it, do a little trim at the top, and you end up with a heart. Cover that with frosting and then add the balloon snugly into the centre so that it can't move around when we try and stab it. Now, I am wondering if I should pre-cut a very small hole at the top of this balloon, but I'm going to risk leaving it whole and cover it with more frosting. That could be a mistake. Let's see what happens. First stab right down to the base to cut through the balloon, a little bit coming out there, and then second stab, it sends raspberry sauce everywhere. It worked, but personally I think it was too effective, and this cake now belongs in a horror movie. If I zoom out, you can see the mess it made, and it's on the floor too. Now, if you use red food colouring like this lady did, it would be even worse. Don't say I didn't warn ya. Moving on. This beautiful cake was made by Dana Cakes in Texas. Now, Chrissy saw it online and asked a different cake decorator near where she lived to make it for her. And this is what happened.
This was supposed to be my granddaughter's first birthday cake. I spent well over $200 on this cake, and this is what I got. This is the worst cake I've ever seen in my life. These are real not real plants, but fake plants. They're supposed to be fondue. I'm so upset.
To fix this, firstly we need to recreate the fail. Now, this particular post got a huge response on social media, with some people siding with the cake decorator, saying that the customer should not have expected to get a beautifully decorated 3-tiered cake for $200, while others backed the customer, saying the delivered cake was horrible and she should get a refund. To me, it looks like the decorator took on a job that was well beyond their level of expertise, and there are no winners in this situation. Even a cake fail of this size takes a lot of time and money to make. I spent yesterday going to the shops to buy all the ingredients and then baking all the required cakes. And even though I can collate this part today into a really quick montage, in reality, making the frosting, leveling, stacking, covering the cakes, mixing fondant colours, cleaning up and doing all the dishes took about 3.5 hours. And apart from that time, you've also got the cost of ingredients. This particular cake recipe uses chocolate and lots of eggs, so it's not cheap to make. Add to that the frosting ingredients, the cake boards, the fondant, the gel food colour, and we're already at $74 US, not including electricity or equipment. And at this stage, the decorator is getting $9 an hour, and it doesn't look good. I guess at this point they gave up and just added a bunch of fake flowers. This method of decorating it only took me an extra 15 minutes and cost me $10 for the flowers. I think we've pretty much nailed the fail. I didn't bother making this little flat mushroom because it really doesn't make the cake look any better. Now, to fix this, if we have a look at what the client was expecting, even just the colour scheme is wrong. This is pink and blue, whereas this is all creams and natural colours and pastel pink, and the layers are not tall enough. The stand is not part of the cake, so you can just ignore that bit. But looking at the decorations though, some of them are printed, but the majority are fondant. All of these little mushrooms are fondant, and this is just not even close. To fix this for a party urgently, I'd suggest you choose to do just one layer and make that look good, and you can cut up the rest of the cake out of sight and people will still enjoy eating it. But I will do all the layers so we can see how much time it takes. For the top mushroom, we're going to melt some marshmallows in the microwave and then stir in some Rice Krispies, or as we call them in Australia, rice bubbles, and then line a bowl the size and shape that you want the top of your mushroom to be, and tip the mixture in and press it down firmly. Now put white fondant over the top of that and using the back of a knife, indent it all the way around to make it look like the gills on a mushroom. Stick in a cake pop stick just a little way, don't push it all the way through, and set that to one side. Take the blue fondant off because it's the wrong colour and pull it off the top bit too so that we can use the cake from that to make this taller. It actually needs to be even taller than that because the mushroom is quite tall on the cake. Then you need to shape it down so it's narrower at the top, cover it in frosting and wrap it in fondant. If you've never worked with fondant before, you have to get the buttercream perfectly smooth first. Think of fondant as the cake wearing lycra. It is going to show up all of the imperfections that are underneath, so take your time on the buttercream. The original cake had a printed door on it, but unless you own a printer that is exclusively used for edible ink and you've got the printable fondant sheets on you, that's not an option for a last minute fix. So if instead you unevenly mix some colour by pulling it and folding it and pulling it and folding it like this, when you roll it out you get a wood grain pattern, and then you can just cut that into the shape of the door frame. There's also a door frame on the bottom layer, so we might as well make that one now too. Repeat the mixing trick to get the same pattern and make a green door to go over the top of the frame. Now you can order edible prints online, so if they had have planned ahead, they could have ordered those and got them printed from someone else, which would have saved some time, but again, cost more money. Cut out circles for the windows and just pop those on either side. By now our fondant is firm enough that if we're gentle it will hold its shape, so peel off the baking paper, and if you added fondant now to this it would look lumpy, remember what I said before, so we need to press buttercream into all the gaps in between the rice bubbles. Now because we made it in the bowl, it's easy to get a perfectly rounded shape, it's just going to give us the shape of the bowl. Then cover that in pale pink fondant and cut out a border that's just a little bit larger than the shape of the bowl. Put a little water on the top of the mushroom stem. This will make the two bits of fondant stick together. Add the top into place and just tuck under that little pink edge, and you can just wipe off any excess buttercream that's under there. Now at a pinch you could just use this and sing happy birthday at the party, but if you've got more time before the party starts, grab layer 2 and take off the pink frosting because it's the wrong colour again, and add another layer of cake to make it the correct height and cover it in buttercream frosting. A cake turntable would make this job much easier and quicker, but it's entirely possible to do it without one. You just need something with a flat edge, and if you put the cake board on some baking paper, it makes it easier for you to be able to spin the cake around as you go. For the bottom layer, we're again going to add extra cake on top to get it the right height, and then spread the frosting up and over the top. The other thing you can do if you don't have a turntable is use a piece of flexible plastic to smooth out the sides. It's not going to be perfect, but it is better than nothing at all. If you want it really smooth, then use a metal scraper, as I said, or the flat side of a large knife will help you as well. Next, we want to measure the height of that bottom layer and draw 2 lines on baking paper to that measurement, and then flip it over so we don't get any pencil in our cake. Next, melt some chocolate. Now, if you don't know how to temper chocolate that has cocoa butter in it, the real chocolate, then you can watch my chocolate secrets video, or because it's a rescue, I'd suggest you should probably use fake or compound chocolate, which is anything that has vegetable fat in the ingredients. So you don't have to temper it, which means it will set without you doing that process. And then you just want to scribble in chocolate up and down between the lines so that it looks like bark. Now I think the original cake just piped really dark brown buttercream on the bottom layer, but I like using chocolate. You can do either, whatever you're more comfortable with. Once it's set, add it to the cake in sections, and if you've got any gaps you can just pipe in some extra chocolate to fill those in. Make and add another door just like we did with the others, and the hinges and a doorknob and everything to make it look good, and then cover the board in pale green fondant. Now for the fondant decorations. Mushrooms are easy, just roll some white and make it a bit skinnier at the top, add some spaghetti down the middle for support, then cut out a circle of fondant and squish it down on the sides and put it on top, and then you just set that aside to firm up. easy. Fondant flowers, on the other hand, they're going to take you a little bit more time and equipment. It's easiest if you have the right cutters and a balling tool and a mat like this one, so you can thin out the ends of the petals. And it's a good idea to add some CMC powder to the fondant to make it harden faster, and this also makes it taste pretty bad. So even though they are edible, I wouldn't eat fondant flowers. If you don't have cutters and tools and you've agreed to make this cake, you could buy ready-made flowers from a cake decorator. The problem you'll have with that option is the price. They're pretty expensive. These ones are $4 or more per flower. The second problem is you're going to need to colour them, so you're also going to have to buy colours so that you can dust them, and dusting each flower when they're roses like this takes quite a bit of time anyway. And then thirdly, the size and type of flowers available may not suit what you actually need for your cake. A better and quicker option would be to use fresh flowers in these mini water tubes, and you can just poke those into the cake. But you would need to discuss that with your client first and let them know the flowers won't be fondant. They will be real flowers, which will look much more beautiful than fake flowers and save you a ton of time, but you of course then also have to pay for the flowers. Now, if you're quoting making a cake for someone and they want everything made out of fondant, then I suggest that you count the number of fondant decorations that you have to make, estimate the time it's going to take to make each one of those, and include that in your quote. Or if you're making it for yourself, for a friend or a family member, make the fondant decorations well ahead of time so that you can just add them to the cake when you need them. So you're not trying to do all the decorations and making the cake all on the same weekend, which can be quite stressful. Now for the leaves, you can buy cutters and veiners, or you can go get some real leaves and put some green coloured chocolate on the back of the leaves. Make sure the leaf has not been sprayed with any pesticides. These are baby leaves off my lemon tree, and the results look great. Now again, if you had a printer that could print in edible ink, you could just print off the plaque like it was on the original one, but if it's a rescue, I'm assuming you don't have one handy, and neither did the original decorator, so we're going to have to make it out of fondant. Using little plunger cutters to do your letters is by far the easiest way to do it. I do have a whole video on different ways to do fondant letters with no equipment, so you could do it another way, but this is just quicker. The time needed to rescue this whole cake and decorate it in the chocolate and make all the fondant decorations and arrange them all on the cake was an additional 7 hours, which brings the pay for the decorator down to a measly $5 US an hour. Now, I'm not sure what your minimum wages are in the US, you can let me know in the comments, but I'm assuming that it's more than that. So if you're a cake decorator and you find yourself in the position where you have grossly underquoted and underestimated how long something's going to take you, you have a choice. You can either hand over a cake wreck and end your cake decorating career, or you can work for free, pull off the job, make it look beautiful, and learn from your mistake and quote a lot more next time. Next cake fail.
And for the pinjata ruffle, using the blue buttercream, hold the petal nozzle against the bottom of the cake with the wider point touching the cake and the thin part facing outward. Hard to get it the way you exactly want it to look. Why didn't any of you stop me? That looks terrible.
Let's talk piping tips. These are typically what you'd use to make a ruffle, and they come in different sizes. This is the smaller one. And with the fat end touching the surface, move along, wiggling it up and down as you do, which is exactly what the book said, but it's just so much easier to learn some things on a video than it is with a written explanation. Now for the bigger one, if we do the exact same thing, you get a bigger ruffle, which is better for overlapping, which is what we want on this cake. The other option is to buy specific ruffle piping tips, and they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. For these ones, you put the tip against the cake and work your way along, wriggling as you go, and it gives you much more of a ruffle. This one has a bigger hole at the end of the ruffle, so you get this raised border on the end of it. I'm not really loving the look of that one. My favourite out of these is the second one. What about you? The great thing about practicing your piping on baking paper first and in only one colour is you can just scrape it all off, put the frosting back into the bag and try again. And you can keep doing that as many times as you want until you've got the hang of it before you put it on the cake. His piping definitely got better the higher up he went on the cake, so I'm pretty sure if he just had have practiced on baking paper first, he would have nailed this. It would have looked great. He also had trouble with it falling over when he cut it.
Every single thing that I do is wrong today, so
Oh, he was not having a good day. That could have been prevented by not stuffing quite so many lollies into the middle. He was a bit enthusiastic there. And also, instead of putting a whole cake on top, cut the circle out of that top layer too, and just put a tiny thin slice of cake on top of the lollies. You don't need that full chunky bit because it's going to make it top heavy, so it probably will fall over. You can watch more cake rescues here with thanks to my amazing patrons. Make it a great week by being kind to others, and I'll see you on Friday.